Good evening, everybody, and welcome to our County Brainstrust Demonstration. My name is Michelle Batting, and I am Devon Young Farmers Competitions Chairman. I'm delighted to have 4 very able young farmers speakers with us tonight and to give a run through of the Brainstrust competition. Before I introduce them, though, I'm going to give a little brief overview of how Brainstrust works. So Brainstrust is made up of 4 people, a chairman, which is Jordan tonight, and 3 panelists. The chairman even will then be provided with 3 topics by the judges, which they will discuss on the night. The chairman will be asked to arrive 20 minutes before the competition, before they're due on stage, and the chairman will in fact actually be given a choice of 6 questions, from which they will choose 3 which will be discussed on the night. Then 3 of the questions will be based on rural affairs, 3 will be general questions, and the chairman must pick 1 rural affairs question, 1 general question, and 1 of their choosing. So for example, if you have a panel of 3 hardcore farmers, then you're going to pick farming questions. If you've got a nurse on your panel, for example, you might pick a question about the NHS. So it's a great opportunity to tailor what you pick. When you're on the stage, the chairman will lead the meeting, and they'll be in charge of the timekeeping. So Brainstrust has a maximum of 20 minutes in total. As you'll see in a minute, Jordan will put his questions to the panel, and the panelists will make an opening statement. So they will either agree or disagree with the statement that's put to them. And once the opening statements have been made, the panel will continue to debate the topic until the chairman stops them to discuss the next topic. I hope tonight will inspire lots of you to take part in Brainstrust. It's a great competition and great for boosting your confidence. So if anybody would like to ask any questions regarding the running of the competition, or would like training, then please feel free to get in touch with me or one of the panel or the YFC office, and we'll be happy to help. And if we can't help, then we'll be happy to put you in touch with someone who can help. So without further ado, I am going to introduce Jordan, who will begin tonight's Brainstrust.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you for your attention, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening and welcome to the wonderful app that is Zoom for this evening's meeting, which will take the form of a Brainstrust. My name is Jordan Winter and I will be your chairman for this evening's meeting, covering topics ranging from farmers' carbon emissions, the idea of a cashless society, and internet dating. With me this evening, I have 3 competent and enthusiastic panel members who I'm sure will provide interesting and informative discussion for you tonight. Firstly, I have Miss Shelley Down.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman.
Shelley is 26 years old and is a member of Buckland Brewer YFC. She currently works as a senior portfolio executive for a pharmaceutical company. Shelley loves anything sporty and was lucky enough to be a volunteer at the London 2012 Olympics. I also know that Shelley is a big fan of a swipe left or swipe right, so I'm really excited to hear her views on the internet dating question. Secondly, I have Miss Camilla Crocker.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman.
Camilla is a beef farmer's daughter from South Devon and is a senior accountant, so I'm really interested to hear her views on the taxing of farmers question. She is currently Devon YFC's Vice Competitions Chairman. Outside of YFC, she enjoys a bit of the good life, either tending to her raised beds or in the greenhouse making her tomatoes blush. And finally, I have Mr. Jack Stuart.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman.
Jack is an East Devon young farmer from Whimple and Broadclyst. Jack runs his family waste and recycling business, who provides waste management services throughout Devon. As a business runner, I will be really excited to hear his views on a cashless society. And ladies and gentlemen, if you are having any trouble with your birds, of a feathered kind that is, Jack is a man to call as he is a keen poultry enthusiast. Now, although tonight is indeed a formal meeting, my panel and I will remain seated throughout and refer to each other by our Christian names. I would also appreciate it if the popular members of the audience amongst you would make sure that your mobile phones are switched off. I will begin with tonight's first question, which I will firstly put to Camilla. All farmers should be held accountable for their carbon emissions and taxed accordingly. I shall repeat the question for the benefit of the panel. All farmers should be held accountable for their carbon emissions and taxed accordingly.
Thank you very much for the question, Mr. Chairman. No, I don't think that farmers should be held accountable for their own carbon emissions, as I think that all farmers are working towards the same cause, which is to provide food for the nation.
Thank you, Camilla. And Shelley?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would have to disagree with Camilla. I feel that farmers should be responsible for their carbon emissions because we all have to play our part.
Thank you, Shelley. And Jack?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to have to completely disagree. I think farmers have got enough worry in the 21st century, and with the looming prospect of Brexit coming up shortly, I think the last thing they should be doing is getting a further tax on their emissions that they're producing.
I would just have to say though, Jack, don't you think it's important that we all play our part, and shouldn't farmers be part of society? Shouldn't they, almost as the person that is creating the food in the first place, kind of the first step of the chain, shouldn't they be responsible?
Yes, but the point is, why should it just be farmers? If we're going to punish people or tax people, as they call it, for their carbon footprint, surely it should be all businesses footing the bill, not just the farming or agriculture sector. You know, why would you penalise a sector that saffrons and manage our natural environment? They're so important. Why would you penalise them in our society?
Especially when you're not going to penalise factories and things, as Jack said, where they, you know, contribute greatly to like fossil fuel emissions and things. Like you say, why would you just pick on one sector, especially one as important as farming? And as Jack mentioned, after Brexit, we're going to have to be a lot more self-sufficient and a lot more reliable on our own resources in our own country. And I just feel like farming is the backbone of this country, because at the end of the day, we all need to be fed and we all need to support farming that's already a very struggling industry.
Shelley, do you feel that we should all be trying to reduce our carbon emissions, and this is going to encourage farmers to get that, to reduce theirs?
I think we should all be doing it, and I think it's important that motion is kind of mentioning farmers, but motion isn't mentioning what we're going to do with the other businesses, such as manufacturing. I think farming is just one industry which needs to be looked at. I think we need to do everything we can to reduce carbon emissions, and farmers should be held responsible. Just because if you all you've got to do is look at farming abroad, I know the UK is somewhat different, but when we look at, for example, like the palm oil industry, there is no responsibility for the level of emissions being given off there. And farming is a big reason for emissions. We can't ignore that. And therefore, I think, you know, we need to start at the grassroots. We need to look at kind of the first step of food production and manufacturing. And unfortunately, that does sit with the farmer. But I don't disagree with my other panelists that say it should be all industries. I just think we need to look at farming first.
I just couldn't think of anything worse at a time where we've got a potential no-deal Brexit looming, which could encourage cheap food entering the country from a trade deal with America. Farmers are going to be up against the wall very much, you know, I potentially see in the next few years if things go south, which is what they're looking like. And then we're going to further hit them with a tax on their emissions. I just don't think that's what the farming industry needs. And I also think farmers have changed a lot in the last few years, you know, from a personal perspective and from a farmer, you know, dealing with a lot of farmers' waste. They take their carbon footprint very seriously. You know, and you can look what they're doing with farm plastic. A few years ago, or there may be still a few farmers doing it now, but hopefully not too many, they're all burning their waste, where now a lot more are looking for recycled options for what they're producing on their farms.
And there's a lot of stewardship schemes available for farmers, like planting trees and things. And obviously, you know, trees are proven to take carbon out of the atmosphere. So, you know, farmers, by penalising farmers who are the ones who care for the trees and the countryside and, you know, keep it in working order, you know, you're kind of battling against sort of somebody who's already helping with carbon emissions. And, you know, there's a lot of talk that cows are one of the biggest, you know, carbon emitters. because of methane. So what are you proposing to do? Tax each individual cow, or how many farmer has how many cows? I mean, think of the administration costs that go along with that. We've already got enough quangos as it is. We don't need someone going around counting cows. I mean, you know, you're going to have farmers strapping bags to their bottoms rather than paying the tax.
I think that's a very interesting point with regards to kind of administration fees. I'd like to imagine that if we became into a society where we were taxing higher in relation with regards to the carbon emissions that any farmer gave off, that would enable the industry and technology to move on to help those farmers. We all know farmers love to avoid a good bit of tax. So I'm sure that some new technology would come around to help them avoid it. And I think that's what we need to do. We need to bring this sort of legislation in that enables the industry to move with technology. We all know those old farmers that don't like to change. I think it's about time we shook it up a little bit.
But Shelley, instead of your approach of all stick for the farmers, why don't we give them a bit of carrot, and instead of taxing, offer some incentives? I always think it's a lot better to reward farmers who are, practicing green and carbon emission neutral practices on their farms. I think we should be giving, instead of taxing farmers who aren't doing it, let's support the ones that are willing, putting the investment in, prepared to make the change to be more carbon neutral, instead of just hitting and having a blanket approach on all of them. Maybe
we should have a stick and a carrot approach. So we stick them from one end and also give them a carrot and an incentive on the other. I think that could work quite well.
Also, we don't want to create any more redundancies. Obviously, with the current climate that there is, people are struggling for jobs anyway. And there's so many jobs that are given through agriculture. I know a lot of farmers already struggle to kind of warrant having a farm worker on the books. So, why would you want to slap another tax on an already struggling industry when they've already got so many expenses that are already skyrocketing?
I completely agree, and further to that point, you look at what's happened with the COVID situation, and we've got nearly a million more people unemployed than what it was at the beginning of the pandemic. Plus, we've got a problem with getting young people involved in farming in the first place, with an already aging industry. What an awful way to discourage anybody interested in getting involved in agriculture by taxing the industry further.
Thank you, panel, for your thought-provoking discussion there. I'm going to have to round this question up. So to summarise, I have both Camilla and Jack agreeing that no, farmers should not be taxed at all, as they're all working towards one aim, which is to feed the nation. Jack feels that we should be, rather than taxing farmers, we should be offering incentives. And we should not be penalising these people that manage the countryside and do very well for our country. Whereas Shelley feels, yes, they should. We all should be playing our part in doing what we can to reduce our overall carbon emissions. And she thinks that we should bring in technology to help farmers do that. Moving on to my second question of the evening, which I will firstly put to Jack. Would the members of the Trust be in favour of a cashless society? I shall repeat the question for the benefit of the panel. Would the members of the Trust be in favour of a cashless society?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What a terrible idea. No, I'm completely against moving forward to a cashless society.
Thank you, Jack. And Camilla?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would have to agree, actually, that we should have a cashless society. It's an absolute nightmare trying to be an accountant when you turn up to do an audit at someone's premises and they suddenly present you with a big bag of cash. Okay, Mr. Johnson, how are we going to explain this to the tax office?
Thank you, Camilla. And finally, Shelley?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would have to agree with Camilla on this one. I didn't even know cash still existed. I thought with COVID we got that up. We got rid of it already.
Oh, but ladies, come on. I think the old saying still goes, cash is king. And I also, I would be feeling sorry moving from a completely cashless society for a lot of our older generation that still heavily rely on it. They're not interested or have the capability of online banking. Even some of them wouldn't even know how to draw, pay by backs or online. So I think for a percentage, and probably a decreasing percentage of the population, cash is still extremely important.
Think about the administration of young farmers, though, and being a previous treasurer, and I don't know if any of you have ever been a treasurer, but cash is a nightmare, especially with members that don't pay and they turn up at the next meeting and say, oh, do you not remember that £20 I gave you at the dance last Friday? No, I don't think you did. At least if it's all online, you can prove that people have paid you, and it's a lot easier to go through and add up all the amounts of money. And I think young farmers would actually benefit from not having a cashless society, because it's a lot easier for us to keep track of money. And obviously, as a charity, we need to be aware of where all our money is. And you can get these really clever little card readers now that are like attached to your phone via Wi-Fi. So someone's just sat at the door of a dance and you tap your card, contactless, everyone's got it on them, and you don't get horrible sticky money at the end of the night when you've got drunk sticky hands all over the money.
Jack, do you feel if we did become a cashless society, children would lose that idea that money is a physical object rather than numbers on a screen?
Oh, I completely agree. And not just children, but everybody. I think when you go out on a night out and you're just taking your card, you're more likely just to spend willy-nilly on things you don't need. Where actually I've always found when it's physical cash, you're a bit more prudent with what you're spending. And I think it's very important these days to be teaching, our generation and the next generation coming up through the importance of spending money. And I think cash is a very good way of doing that.
You just said there, though, Jack, that people would be more conscious of spending money because they're actually physically counting the notes as they put them on the bar. Well, if anything, we need people to go out and forget about how much they're spending, because our pubs need our support. We need them to be forgetting how much they're spending when they're blotted on a night out to keep the society running and keep all the businesses that have been affected by COVID in business.
And don't you think as well that rather than us being reliant on a physical cash, we should all just learn a little bit of self-restraint? If you can't keep hold of your money on a night out, Jack, I think it's something you need to be worried about. I think we all need to be a little bit more careful. We need to learn that just by tapping your card, that is actual money. And I've definitely learned that. And I don't see why anyone else can. And it's something we should be installing in our children now. So as society moves more and more cashless, which it is, it's obvious to see that it's moving to cashless. I mean, I can go and buy a Chinese 1 second, and if I wanted to smoke, I'm sure I could probably buy drugs cashless these days if you're into it. And I think it's just like that's the way society's going, and you'll get caught behind if you keep your money under your mattress.
Panel, do you, being in a county that does struggle with our internet connection, do you feel that with a lot of electronic payments, there's going to be much more problems with regards to internet in the payment thing?
I think the majority of payments are done over mobile signal, which is somewhat different to like have broadband. You don't tend to have as many issues with that. I think most pubs, you can go in there, you can pay. I've not really come across any issues recently. I think, and if we went cashless, infrastructure would be invested in by the government, and it would be better and better and better. And I think that's the real benefit of going cashless. Is imagine if we can really embrace technology. Like if you look at Japan, you can literally walk into a restaurant, scan a QR code, it's paid for, and your food turns up. You don't even have to speak to anyone if you don't want to.
And you mentioned about the children earlier, Jordan, and the value of money. Well, how about instead of leaving your tooth under the pillow for the tooth fairy to leave you 50p or £1 that you then go and spend on sweets or something down the corner shop? Wouldn't it be nice if the tooth fairy transferred you a £5 for that, and then it went into a little savings account, so when little Jimmy is 22, he can buy a house because he's got so many savings stashed away that he didn't even know he had, rather than wasting it when he was young?
Oh, Camilla, that sounds so boring. The whole fun of losing a tooth as a child was seeing the money under your pillow. I can't think we can anything worse of denying kids like that. I think both of you have framed cash as well as anti-business, but in the line of work we've done, we would always try and take a payment, especially now with COVID, up front, by card, over the phone. However, if it was left to you two, if I had a customer that was adamant of paying by cash, I wouldn't be allowed to take it. Now, surely that's anti-business.
It all depends, Jack. I suppose if you're the type of person that takes cash in hand, so you don't have to pay taxes, it might benefit business. However, I think in most cases, it probably only benefits the individual.
Not necessarily. I'm always for putting more money back into the people's pockets, not the government's pockets. And I think that's extremely important, and allowing people to keep more of their money. I'm not hinting that any illegal activity should happen, but all I will say is as long as people can keep more of their money, that will therefore mean more money getting put back into the economy, which I think is better. And I've always said it's better for the person to be spending money than the government to be spending your money.
It would also cut down on crime, though.
Sorry, Camilla, I'm going to have to stop you there. To summarise that second question of the evening, we have Jack saying absolutely no, this would not be a good idea. Cash is king. The older generation are not used to these electronic payments, which would not be good. It would encourage overspending. Sorry, my phone just rang. Some people just generally like to use cash. Whereas Camilla and Shelley both agreeing, they feel yes, it would be a great thing. For Camilla, handling cash is just a nightmare. I mean, the germs, we've become very much a germaphobe society now. It encourages tax evasion, and Shelley feels that this is just the way the world is going, and we should be embracing this technology. Moving on to my third and final question of the evening, which I will firstly put to Shelley. Do the panel believe that internet dating apps such as Tinder are the future of dating? I shall repeat the question for the benefit of the panel. Do the panel believe that internet dating apps such as Tinder are the future of dating?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I would completely have to disagree with you as a woman who's meant to be married but is now getting married next year. I met him face to face, so I don't see the benefit of online dating apps.
Thank you, Shelley. And Jack?
I'm going to have to agree with Shelley. I think online dating is awful, and I think we should be going back to sort of old-fashioned routes of meeting people.
Thank you, Jack. And finally, Camilla.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd have to agree. I think Tinder is the future of dating. I mean, who doesn't love a little bit of catfish?
Probably the people that have been catfished, Camilla. I'm not really sure, or ghosted, and all of those familiar terms that by online dating, it allows us to be quite frank, nasty to people. We judge them by a picture on Tinder. And even if we do get as far as messaging them, we message them once or twice and completely ghost them. You wouldn't be able to do that in public, and I don't think realistically our society should be upholding that as a way in which we should act.
To be honest, though, I do think, right, it teaches you how to sell yourself. I mean, as somebody who was on Tinder about a few years ago now, I had a fantastic bio. I included so much detail. I included a joke. And, you know, it encouraged people to message me and ask me about my interesting bio. I mean, obviously, I included a few flattering photos of myself, but I also included my friendship group. So they already knew what my friends looked like. And it did, you know, and with someone who had about 600 odd matches, it was such a success. I had the pick of the bunch. I wouldn't be able to go out and meet 600 people and have the pick of them all. They'd all be off with someone better looking.
But Camilla, were any of those lads, I presume lads, out of the 600 that you matched with, did any of them turn out to be any good?
Well, yes, actually. At the time, do you know what? It comes down to what you're looking for at the time. I think a few guys that messaged me, they were probably really, really nice. And, you know, me being young and foolish, I was just looking for the one night kind of thing. So I do think you need to maybe use Tinder with caution. Obviously, you need to kind of think about what you're looking for. But I do think it's a great way for people, especially farmers. Wouldn't farmers love it if they could get their dung spreading done and also have a bit of a chat with a girl at the same time and maybe set up what he's doing later that evening? How is he going to do that if he's not on Tinder or any other dating app? I just really think this is the future. What about shy people? Shy people who can't go up to another person at a dance and ask them to have a drink. You can just be sat on your joggers on the sofa watching Strictly, and you can message somebody and act like the don of, you know, anybody. You can just be like, hey, I'm the coolest guy going. They don't know. And then it's just up to you to kind of act the part later on. And then by the time you actually do reveal your true personality, you're 2 years down the line and you're engaged.
Okay, panel. Sorry, Camilla, I'm going to have to stop you there on your passionate rendition there. So just to summarize our third and final question now, I have both Shelley and Jack saying, no, this is not the way forward. Shelley feels it encourages body shaming, people judging people on their appearance. And Jack just feels we should be going back to the old face-to-face meeting and that getting that initial spark, as they would say. Whereas Camilla passionately feels that Tinder and other dating apps are available, are the way forward. It really taught her to help to sell herself and be positive about herself, and it would help people that maybe are a bit shy about the face-to-face thing get out there. I would like to take this opportunity to thank the panel for their thought-provoking conversation this evening. I hope they have entertained you as much as they have entertained me, and I would be most grateful if we could show our appreciation. I would also like to thank you, the audience, even though I can't see you, for being so attentive this evening. As there is no further business, all that remains for me to do is to wish you all a safe journey home and declare this meeting closed. And when you're finished, get a look at Camilla's bio. It sounds absolutely amazing.